Arthur Penhaligon III, or Artie, as nobody dared call him to his face, had more money than sense. Which, let's be frank, is redundant. If you have that much money, the need for sense evaporates like morning dew on a Miami beach. Artie made his fortune in, well, it was complicated. Something to do with algorithms, derivatives, and a healthy dose of moral ambiguity. He preferred not to dwell on the details, mostly because he didn't entirely understand them himself. He'd hired people to do the understanding for him. Smart people. People with advanced degrees and the soulless glint of ambition in their eyes. Artie lived in a glass and steel monstrosity overlooking Central Park. It was minimalist to the point of being clinically sterile. White walls, designer furniture that looked uncomfortable just to look at, and a collection of modern art that mostly consisted of blobs of color arranged in ways that Artie suspected were profoundly meaningless. He'd once asked his art consultant, a woman named Bronwyn, with a voice like crushed velvet and an IQ that probably exceeded his net worth, what a particular Pollock actually meant. She'd blinked slowly, her eyes betraying a flicker of pity, and said, "It's about the artist's existential angst, Arthur. The inherent absurdity of the human condition, expressed through the medium of splattered paint." Artie had nodded sagely, wondering if he could expense a bottle of good scotch to help him grasp the absurdity better. His days were a meticulously orchestrated symphony of meetings, power lunches at restaurants where the portions were inversely proportional to the prices, and conference calls that could curdle milk. He owned a yacht, a private jet, and a string of polo ponies he hadn't ridden in years. He had a wife, Beatrice, who was beautiful, impeccably dressed, and perpetually bored. They communicated primarily through lawyers and passive-aggressive post-it notes left on the refrigerator. Their marriage was less a union of souls and more a complex financial transaction. Artie wasn't happy. This wasn't a great revelation. He knew he wasn't happy. Everyone knew he wasn't happy. It was sort of the elephant in the room at all his ridiculously lavish parties. He just didn't know what to do about it. He'd tried everything, or so he told himself. Therapy, twice divorced his therapist, yoga, too bendy, meditation, too quiet, and a brief, ill-advised foray into competitive hot dog eating resulted in indigestion and a profound sense of self-loathing. He was going through the motions. Wake up, power shower, power breakfast, green smoothie that tasted suspiciously like lawn clippings, power meetings, power lunch, more power meetings, power dinner, power drink, sleep. Repeat. The only real variation was the flavor of the existential dread he felt each morning. Sometimes it was vanilla, sometimes chocolate, sometimes something vaguely resembling burnt rubber. Then came the song. It wasn't even his kind of song. Artie preferred classical music, mostly because he thought it made him sound sophisticated. Beethoven, Mozart, that sort of thing. He couldn't tell a sonata from a symphony, but he could tell you the market capitalization of every major tech company on the planet. This song was country, or, rather, something vaguely adjacent to country. It was playing on the radio in his chauffeured limousine, a black, elongated thing that reeked of leather and suppressed ambition, while he was en route to a meeting to discuss hostile takeovers or leverage buyouts or some other term he pretended to understand. The song was called "Dust on the Dashboard." It was sung by a woman with a voice that sounded like it had been marinated in bourbon and heartbreak. The lyrics were simple, almost painfully so. It was about a woman driving down a dusty road, thinking about her life, her regrets, and the simple beauty of a sunset. The chorus went,
"Dust on the dashboard, sunlight in my eyes, another mile marker fading in the skies. Just a song on the radio, whisper in the breeze, reminding me of everything I meant to be."
Artie scoffed. Dust on the dashboard? He hadn't seen dust since he fired his last cleaning lady for using the wrong brand of pledge. Sunlight? He had UV-tinted windows to protect his delicate complexion from the ravages of the sun. A song on the radio? He had a bespoke playlist curated by a team of musicologists to perfectly match his mood and enhance his productivity. And yet, something about the song stuck. Maybe it was the simplicity. Maybe it was the raw, unadulterated emotion in the singer's voice. Maybe it was the sheer, audacious normalcy of it all. Whatever it was, it burrowed its way into Artie's brain like a persistent earworm. He found himself humming it in the shower. He caught himself tapping his foot to it during board meetings. He even, much to Beatrice's utter bewilderment, downloaded it onto his phone. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of negotiating the acquisition of a company that made widgets, Artie still wasn't entirely sure what a widget was, but apparently they were worth billions. He found himself sitting alone in his penthouse, staring out at the glittering cityscape. Beatrice was at a charity gala, doing her duty as a trophy wife. Artie had pleaded a migraine. He wasn't lying exactly. He had a headache of the soul. He put on the song. He listened to it again, and again, and again. Something shifted. It wasn't a dramatic, earth-shattering epiphany. It was more like a slow, subtle cracking of the ice around his heart. He started to see the emptiness in his meticulously curated life, the hollowness in his perfectly tailored suits, the sheer, utter pointlessness of accumulating more things he didn't need. He started to wonder what he had become. He'd always told himself that he was building something, creating jobs, driving innovation, contributing to the economy. But deep down, he knew he was just chasing numbers, chasing power, chasing a fleeting sense of validation that never quite arrived. The song became a catalyst. It was a reminder of something lost, something forgotten, a whisper of a life unlived. The next morning, Artie did something utterly out of character. He canceled all his meetings. He called Beatrice and told her he was going away for a while. She didn't ask where. She didn't seem to care. She just told him to make sure the legal team knew how to reach him. He packed a bag. He didn't pack his usual designer luggage. He grabbed an old duffel bag he hadn't used since college. He filled it with jeans, t-shirts, and a worn-out copy of Leaves of Grass he'd never actually read. He got into his car, not the limousine. He took his vintage Mustang, a cherry red beauty he'd bought on a whim years ago and promptly forgotten about. He hadn't driven it in ages. It smelled of leather and gasoline and memories of a life he barely remembered. He turned on the ignition. The engine roared to life. He drove. He drove aimlessly, with no destination in mind. He just followed the road. He rolled down the windows and let the wind whip through his hair. He turned up the radio, and he listened to the song. He ended up in Montana. He didn't plan it. He just kept driving west until he ran out of coast. He found a small town nestled in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where the pace of life was slow and deliberate, and where the biggest news of the week was whether or not the local diner had fresh blueberry pie. He checked into a small, rustic motel, the kind with creaky floors, faded wallpaper, and a faint smell of pine needles and mothballs. It was a far cry from his sterile penthouse, but it felt right. He spent his days hiking in the mountains, fly fishing in crystal-clear streams, and talking to the locals at the diner. He learned their names. He learned their stories. He learned about their lives. He met a woman named Sarah. She owned a small bookstore in town. She was intelligent, kind, and had a smile that could melt glaciers. She wasn't impressed by his money. She didn't care about his power. She just saw him. He started volunteering at the local animal shelter. He walked dogs, cleaned cages, and learned the names of all the animals. He discovered a profound sense of satisfaction in doing something simple, something meaningful. He started writing. He hadn't written anything since college. He didn't write about algorithms or derivatives or hostile takeovers. He wrote about the mountains, the streams, the people he met, and the slow, steady process of rediscovering himself. He started to feel alive again. He started to shed the layers of armor he'd built up over the years. He stopped wearing tailored suits. He started wearing jeans and t-shirts. He stopped worrying about his appearance. He started focusing on his inner self. He realized that happiness wasn't about accumulating things. It was about connection. It was about purpose. It was about gratitude. He stayed in Montana for 6 months. When he finally returned to New York, he was a changed man. Beatrice barely recognized him. He sold his penthouse. He sold his yacht. He sold his private jet. He gave away most of his possessions. He started a foundation to support local artists and musicians. He invested in small businesses in struggling communities. He used his wealth to make a difference in the world. He divorced Beatrice. It was amicable. They both knew it was the right thing to do. He moved back to Montana. He bought a small cabin on a lake. He spent his days writing, hiking, and volunteering at the animal shelter. He married Sarah. He learned to play the guitar. He wasn't very good, but he enjoyed it. He even tried to write his own song. It was terrible, but it was his. He still listened to Dust on the Dashboard. It still reminded him of everything he meant to be. Artie Penhaligon III, the millionaire, was gone. In his place was Arthur Penhaligon, a man who had finally found peace, purpose, and a measure of happiness. He discovered that the power of music wasn't just about the melody or the lyrics. It was about the way it made you feel. It was about the way it connected you to something larger than yourself. It was about the way it could change your life. And that, he realized, was worth more than all the money in the world. He understood something else, too. The dust on the dashboard wasn't just literal. It was the accumulation of days, of experiences, of choices made and unmade. It was the residue of a life lived. And sometimes, all it takes is a song to make you see it. Arthur's quiet cabin life in Montana wasn't exactly as idyllic as it sounds. See, once you've been a billionaire, shedding that skin entirely is harder than convincing a cat to take a bath. The world, it turns out, doesn't quite let you disappear that easily, especially not when you've made a fortune in algorithms and derivatives. Those things have a way of sticking around, like bad karma or glitter at a children's birthday party. The first sign that things were about to get weird came in the form of a talking marmot. Yes, you read that right. A talking marmot. Arthur was sipping his morning coffee on his porch, admiring the sunrise over the lake, a scene ripped straight from a Thomas Kinkade painting, if Kinkade had a penchant for irony, when the marmot waddled up to him. It was a plump, furry creature with beady eyes and a surprisingly articulate voice. "Penhaligon," it said, its voice a gravelly baritone that sounded suspiciously like a disgruntled teamster. "We need to talk." Arthur, who had been cutting back on the organic mushrooms Sarah grew in the garden, initially dismissed it as a hallucination. But the marmot persisted. "Don't give me that I'm imagining things look," the marmot said, rolling its eyes. "I'm real. And I'm here to discuss the ethical implications of your, business practices prior to your little Montana metamorphosis." Turns out, the marmot was the self-appointed representative of the local wildlife, who were, shall we say, less than thrilled about some of Artie's past investments. Specifically, a fracking operation that was polluting the local water supply and making the trout taste vaguely of kerosene. "We understand you're trying to be a better person," the marmot conceded, "but actions have consequences. And those consequences are currently being shat out by the entire ecosystem." Thus began Artie's unexpected career as an environmental activist. He spent the next several months embroiled in legal battles with his former associates, navigating the labyrinthine world of environmental regulations, and learning more about fracking than he ever wanted to know. He discovered that while he might have escaped the corporate world hadn't quite escaped him. He also discovered that marmots are surprisingly effective negotiators. The next layer of weirdness involved Beatrice. Remember Beatrice, his ex-wife? The beautiful, impeccably dressed, perpetually bored one? Well, she wasn't exactly thrilled about Artie's newfound sainthood. Not because she missed him, mind you. She had moved on to a Swiss banker with a penchant for yodeling and a collection of antique cuckoo clocks. No, Beatrice was upset because Artie's transformation had made her look bad. See, she had built her entire identity around being the wife of a powerful, wealthy man. Now, she was just the ex-wife of a reformed millionaire who talked to marmots and fought fracking operations. It wasn't a good look for her brand. So she decided to write a tell-all memoir. The memoir, titled From Penthouse to Purgatory, My Life with a Millionaire Gone Mad, was a scathing, often hilarious, and occasionally libelous account of their marriage. It portrayed Artie as a narcissistic, emotionally stunted sociopath with a pathological fear of dust bunnies. It also claimed that he had once tried to bribe a judge with a limited edition Beanie Baby collection. The book became a bestseller. Artie, much to his surprise, found the whole thing rather amusing. He even bought a copy and autographed it. To Beatrice, thanks for the laughs. Arthur, the Marmot Whisperer. The royalties from the book, however, were another matter. Beatrice, in a fit of pique, decided to donate them to a charity that supported the very fracking operation Artie was fighting. This led to another series of legal battles, this time involving intellectual property rights, charitable donations, and the thorny question of whether or not Beatrice was deliberately trying to sabotage Artie's environmental efforts. Arthur found himself back in New York, facing off against Beatrice in a courtroom filled with reporters, lawyers, and a surprisingly large contingent of animal rights activists. During a particularly tense moment in the trial, the courtroom doors burst open, and in walked the band. Yes, the band. The woman who sang Dust on the Dashboard had heard about Artie's story and decided to come and show her support. She brought her entire band with her, a ragtag group of musicians who looked like they'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. They set up their instruments in the courtroom and proceeded to play Dust on the Dashboard. The judge, a stern-looking woman who clearly had no patience for such shenanigans, threatened to hold them in contempt. But the music was infectious. Soon, even the lawyers and the reporters were tapping their feet. By the time the song ended, the entire courtroom was in tears. The judge, wiping her eyes with a tissue, declared a recess. During the recess, the singer approached Artie. "I just want to thank you," she said, her voice still marinated in bourbon and heartbreak. "Your story, it's given my song a whole new meaning. It's shown me that even the most lost souls can find their way back." She then handed Artie a crumpled piece of paper. "This is the name of a shaman in Peru," she said. "He can help you understand the marmots." And that, dear reader, is how Arthur Penhaligon found himself trekking through the Amazon rainforest, ingesting copious amounts of hallucinogenic tea, and communicating with marmots on a spiritual level. He learned that the marmots weren't just concerned about fracking. They were deeply worried about the future of humanity. They believed that humans were destroying the planet, and that only a radical shift in consciousness could save it. They tasked Artie with a mission: to find the lost chord. The lost chord, according to Marmot legend, was a musical note so powerful that it could harmonize the entire universe. It was said to be hidden somewhere on Earth, waiting to be discovered by someone pure of heart and attuned to the vibrations of the cosmos. Arthur, fueled by hallucinogenic tea and a newfound sense of purpose, embarked on a quest to find the lost chord. His journey took him to remote corners of the globe. He meditated with monks in Tibet, danced with shamans in Africa, and climbed mountains in Nepal. He learned about ancient musical traditions, quantum physics, and the interconnectedness of all things. He met a guru who claimed to be able to communicate with plants. He encountered a secret society of musicians who believed that music was the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. He even had a brief, ill-advised affair with a performance artist who dressed entirely in recycled aluminum foil. Along the way, he attracted a following of devoted believers. They called themselves the Harmonizers. They were a diverse group of people, musicians, artists, activists, and oddballs, united by their belief in the power of music to change the world. The Harmonizers traveled with Artie, playing music wherever they went. They organized impromptu concerts in parks, town squares, and even corporate boardrooms. They sang songs of peace, love, and environmental awareness. Their music touched people. It inspired them. It gave them hope. The Harmonizers became a global phenomenon. They were featured on news programs, in magazines, and even in a documentary film. They were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. But Artie wasn't interested in fame or recognition. He was focused on finding the lost chord. After years of searching, he finally found it. It wasn't hidden in a remote temple or a secret cave. It was hidden in plain sight. It was the sound of a child laughing. Artie was visiting a refugee camp in Syria, playing music for the children. He was tired, disillusioned, and on the verge of giving up. He'd spent years chasing a mythical chord, and he was starting to wonder if it was all just a pipe dream. Then he heard it. A small girl, no older than 5, was laughing. She was laughing at a silly song Artie was playing on his guitar. Her laughter was pure, unadulterated joy. It was a sound so beautiful, so innocent, that it resonated through Artie's entire being. He realized that the lost chord wasn't a single note. It was the harmony of human connection. It was the sound of hope, love, and compassion. He understood that the power of music wasn't just about changing individual lives. It was about changing the world. It was about creating a symphony of humanity, where everyone played their part in creating a more beautiful, just, and harmonious future. Arthur returned to Montana. He disbanded the Harmonizers. He sold his cabin on the lake. He donated all his remaining wealth to charity. He disappeared. Some say he went back to the Amazon to live with the Marmots. Others say he became a wandering minstrel, traveling the world and playing music for anyone who would listen. Still others say he simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a legend and a song. But one thing is certain: Arthur Penhaligon, the millionaire who was changed by a song, left the world a little bit better than he found it. And that, my friends, is a truth stranger than fiction. A truth that hums with the faint vibration of a lost chord found not in grand pronouncements, but in the simple, ringing laughter of a child. A reminder that even in the dustiest of lives, there's always a melody waiting to be discovered.
Dust on the dashboard, sunlight in my eyes, another mile marker fading in the skies. Just a song on the radio, a whisper in the breeze, reminding me of everything I meant to be. Dust on the dashboard, sunlight in my eyes, another mile marker fading in the skies. Just a song on the radio, a whisper in the breeze, reminding me of everything I meant to be.
What's your dust on the dashboard song? What song makes you stop and think about your life? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this video made you question everything, or at least chuckle, give it a like and share it with someone who needs a little bit of existential marmot in their life. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that are equal parts funny and thought-provoking.